How many?
I got a homeless person in the bed.
What is going on YouTube? We're live here today with we got Aaron and we got Adam, of course, and myself. A little bit of housekeeping before we dig straight into the Q&As, and you guys know the business. We go straight through your questions right here live, answering as much of them as we can with as much direction as we can give possibly. A little bit of housekeeping though. The Discord group, I set it up again. We got it running. Everything was good. And then suddenly it got banned for a second time due to someone mass spamming reports. So what we're going to do now is I've hired a group of people to set up a community group independently, and it's going to require two-factor authentication, so there'll be no raiding, essentially raid spamming. And I do think somebody in the community who has a Discord group, which will remain unnamed, was the one who directed the spamming towards our account, whatever. Needless to say, we're going to get this thing set up once and for all for you guys and have that thing rolling. So as we go through this, feel free to drop your questions down in the comments below. Let's rock and roll. We got Mac Gerard here. He asks, Yohimbine HCl versus Alpha Yohimbine, what do you prefer? What do you guys think?
Oh, well, they definitely kick different, that's for sure. I think so. But then I'm very, very sensitive to Yohimbine. I am the biggest Yohimbine lightweight there is. I got people that will take 10 milligrams of an alpha and they'll be like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm sleeping, nothing's wrong. I'll take 1.5 to 3 max, and I feel like a crackhead.
Of just of Alpha Yohimbine?
Yeah, I don't like it whatsoever. Like it's really, for me, both options. I think actually I might have a bottle. I think the Raw Scene Alpha Yohimbine from Gorilla Mind is the one I typically use because they send it to me. And yeah, full junkie mode the first half of the day. Do not enjoy it, but it does work very well with the old Clen.
Yeah, would you say, I was just going to ask, would you say in comparison to Clen, like which one is more potent for you as an individual?
Oh, Yohimbine for sure is way more potent, but I typically use them together. I don't think I will this prep though. I don't think I need to, so that's a good thing.
Yeah. I feel like I'm the same there too. Like I take 3 milligrams of Yohimbine or Melatonin, and same thing. I feel like norepinephrine goes to the roof. I'm like shaky from it, and 40 micrograms of Clen, and I'm fine. So yeah, I'm the same. Like, geez, 3 milligrams, and that's typically all I run in a fat loss phase. I'd rather just do more cardio or up the Clen a bit more.
Yeah. To be honest, I think I'm more sensitive to Clen. I'm sensitive to all stimulants, but in particular, Clen gets me like racked out of my mind, and I actually really fucking hate it, to be fair. But Yohimbine isn't as significant, at least with like the shakiness. For me, it's the shakiness, and like just typing on a keyboard gets to be hard when I'm on Clen. Yohimbine doesn't necessarily give me that, but it's more of the psychological angst that I get, like the sort of like on edge feeling, or like Adam said, the epinephrine kind of release.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like using a high dose of Yohimbine, I feel like you're giving yourself like synthetic PTSD, because as you said, like you walk around on edge a lot, at least I do. And then I'm always like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Like I'm ready to go off at anything, and it's literally just Yohimbine. And as soon as I pull that, fine.
Do you find Kolton, do you suffer with like the Clen migraines and cramps a lot as well with it? Are you susceptible to that?
Even at like 20 micrograms, the shakes start really hitting, but 40 micrograms, like which I'm doing right now, is like the cramps are horrible, the headaches are nightmares, and like you can get around it. I just have to be very considerate of my like fluid intake, and especially like my caffeine intake just has to be basically null when I'm on clenbuterol. But yeah, it's definitely hits me like that for sure.
The sodium intake as well. I remember the first time I started taking it way back when, my first year of bodybuilding with Steve, and the headaches, those like real intense 5-second migraines from hell.
Yeah.
They don't last very long, but they're horrible and they're frequent. Yeah. And and then I found just upping the sodium just took away all of the Clen side effects like, instantly. And also allowed me to take it right before bed with no issues as well. So
wow. Clenbuterol right before bed, eh?
And I was taking like 100 micrograms at one point before, across the day, but I'd do half of it before bed as well. Absolutely fine. No issues whatsoever, as long as my sodium stayed consistent and high.
And you were still able to sleep pretty consistently?
Clen does nothing to my sleep. It's absolutely, it's weird. Like, and I just said to you
Awesome.
before when we went live, I was just talking about how shit my sleep is. Maybe I should put some Clen in there. Might help.
That's
You
funny.
sleep with Clen. Oh god damn. Nick P asks, where do you guys fall on the popularity of Serostim? There's been a big wave of, I guess there has been a big wave of popularity with everybody kind of talking about using it at higher doses.
God
I
damn,
mean,
Chase's channel, isn't it?
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean,
all due to
I
him.
think, yeah, I think everything's contextual. Like, for example, if you can afford it and run it without like destroying yourself financially, and you can get a hang of it, handle in it, sure. But like, as I'm sure Aaron would probably say, it's not going to be the thing that turns you into a mass monster. Like switching from generic HGH to Serostim, I don't think it's going to be like, oh my god, now I'm an IFBB pro. Yeah, it might be, you know, you might get a bit more effect out of it, but I don't think it's going to be a game changer. And for what you're probably paying for it, spend the money on growth hormone, food, and proper coaching.
What's it costing?
Dude, it's absurd.
No idea.
It's like,
what's the dollar cost per unit?
It can range, well, a pen can range anywhere from, like, depending on who you get it from, $400 to $800. So USD. So it's like you could buy a kit of Increlex for that price. You know what I mean? So it's just fucking absurd.
That's expensive.
Absurd.
Yeah.
It doesn't, and like, I'm all about sustainability with bodybuilding, because at the end of the day, it's like doing this as long as you possibly can. And if your growth hormone dose is just like out of the fucking world, like, you're screwed, you know.
Yeah, I mean, and also think of it like the price. So like, if, as Kolton said, like, if you're paying
my phone is
USD,
ringing in my headphones.
All good.
I don't know how to turn this shit off.
I was gonna say,
yeah, anyways, it's too expensive. I would just use generics because ultimately, like, it's going to be more effective long term, because you'll be able to afford it long term, in my mind.
Yeah, and I was going to say, like, if you're spending 800 USD on X amount of Serostim, and let's say you can run, like, I don't know, 4 IU at that amount, spend 800 USD on generic growth hormone, you can probably run 12 IU at that amount. You're paying that amount, so you can always work out like the cost per unit, as you mentioned, Aaron, and work out, well, what's going to be the most effective cost per unit. Because I would say, if you can only afford, let's say, 2 IUs of Serostim, probably not going to be as effective as, I don't know, 10 IUs of generic, if the price somehow works out to be the same.
100%. But I had this conversation as well, just about growth hormone in general, with one of my clients the other day. And he was asking, you know, what do you think about growth hormone? You know, is it the game changer? Blah, blah, blah. You know, and it's just like, look, growth hormone's great. It's good if you can afford to run a legitimately effective dose. And what are you looking to get out of it? I really try and think about, in your mind, be as honest as you can and tell me, what are you imagining it's going to do to you? You know, what are you thinking? What are you hoping for? And I'll give you the reality check, and then you can decide if it's worth the bang for buck. And then it's the affordability. Like you said, the sustainability of bodybuilding is massive. If you haven't got disposable income to just say, yeah, sure, I get it, it's no problem. Like, honestly, bro, don't worry about the money, it's fine. That's the answer I'm looking for. And you can tell when people are serious about that or not. If they're like, you know, how much is this, the cost of this? I'm just like, don't worry about it, mate. You know, just get to work, go train, you're fine. Like, cross that bridge later. It's not going to be the game changer. And I really think in most, especially in my personal experience as well, later on into your bodybuilding, when you've got a good slab of muscle on your body, it works way better. It works so much better if you've got a little bit more muscle mass and you're walking around with less body fat in general without being in a diet. Do you know what I mean? And then we're going to start seeing some sort of legit composition results from it.
I like what you just said there when you asked, you know, your clients, like, what do you expect to get out of it? Because that really does kind of help them meet reality with expectations. And yeah, I think a lot of people expect to turn into a mass monster when they take growth hormone. And especially if you're using, like you said, if you're not able to take an effective dose, you might as well just save your money and spend it on more testosterone, because it's so expensive. And if you're not going to be able to run it for a consistent, decent amount of time, it's just like, why run it in the first place, I guess. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And then it's a case of individual response as well. So I'd say, well, do you know what? If you've got a little bit, if you've got enough to buy a box this month, buy one. Let's test it. Let's test a few doses. Start at, say, 4, and bump 6, 8, 10. Let's find a sweet spot. And then you can decide if that was worth the bang for buck. And if it's like, yeah, I really liked it, we got a legitimate good response from it, cosmetically, sleep-wise, fat loss-wise, whatever the goal is. So yeah, this is worth the bang for buck at this dose. And then you can make a decision, right? Rather than it just be a question mark in the back of your head all the time. Just buy a box, try it. All right, if it doesn't work, you're only a couple $100 down. Move on with your life.
Yeah. Good way to put
it. Yeah, agreed.
Raw, I'm gonna mess this name up, so I'm not even gonna try. What are y'all thoughts on low dose Trenase, 150 milligrams a week on the off season? Well,
no,
that's not low dose.
It's not low dose.
Yeah, not low dose. I agree.
For instance, I'm doing a pretty aggressive cut right now. I'd say, and I'm on 70 milligrams per week, and that's just fine. But like even for me, which that sounds like a tiny dose for some people. But that's like essential. Like my perception of it is very much so there. Like I feel it instantaneously. Me and Adam talked about this last week, but it's something that I have to be very cautious with because of like just counteractive effect. I can't sleep well at lots of different things. So I try to take my time with it and go really slow and low on that hoe. So I think, honestly, that's not quite a low dose. And we also asked this question last week, now that I recall it. We talked about using it in the context of like, if someone's a construction worker, they're working a really laborious job and they're like constantly on their feet, getting 20K steps a day. There is those people out there. I think, a little bit of Trenbolone could do some favors for them because of its glucocorticoid effects, but I don't think it's necessarily something that most people, if not the majority, the largest majority of people would benefit from.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree that I feel like running a dose of Tren, at least at that amount, you're probably just going to cut your off-season short when your health markers go to shit. If you're someone who checks your health markers, because that's the thing, right? In a growth phase, arguably, you want to be growing as much as possible, which typically for most means as long as possible. It's contextual. So if you're taking a bunch of Tren, you do blood work in 6 to 8 weeks, and it looks horrendous. I mean, typically, if you try to be responsible, you try to stop and correct that. So I would remove the Tren and just adjust or increase other injectables to make up for that total anabolic load. Like we discussed last time, how most steroids kind of do the same thing in terms of building muscle mass. Sure, they have some unique effects like Tren and glucocorticoid receptors, DHT derivatives helping with aromatization, etc. But for the most part, the anabolism is relatively the same. So you want to choose something which is going to give you the least side effects that you can scale and take consistently.
Yeah, for sure. I reckon. Well, for 150 milligrams is definitely not low. So if you're hanging around a bunch of people that are saying this is low dose, man, then get rid of those crackheads out of your life because they're not good for you. Same as you, Kolton. Apart from I went 50 a week was one of my low dose little experiments. Still felt it, but it was enough to give me that little kick and an edge, without having any of the negative side effects, cognitive-wise, sleep-wise, appetite-wise, whatever it might be. But it was enough to give me a little bit of a pick-me-up, mostly in the gym. Not cosmetically, but definitely in the gym. But that's most likely because I wasn't lean enough at the time to see cosmetic appeal from it. But was it necessary? Absolutely not. Do you know what I mean? It's one of them. If I was looking for that little bit of a pick-me-up, what I know now about, say, for instance, nootropics, if I'm looking for that energy, that slight little uptake in sort of controlled aggression, like those kinds of things that you're looking for, you don't need to pound yourself with the most aggressive steroid to get that. You could probably get away with taking a little bit of lion's mane and 50 megs of modafinil every other day, and you'd feel like, yeah, I feel great, rather than, or even just have an extra shot in your coffee. I think everyone's moving right to the extreme, thinking, this is going to be a big game changer again, when it's just really not. And I think at 150 milligrams is definitely enough to, like Adam said, you're going to see some of the negative side effects cascade there, and it's not going to be productive for an off season, especially. You're going to start seeing the downregulation of appetite and sleep there at that kind of dose. And realistically, how long are you running that for? Maybe 6 weeks or something like that. Probably, if you're like, okay, I'm going to run 150 in the off season for whatever reason, like you're probably, if anyone's going to plan that, they're going to say, okay, let's probably max that out at 6 weeks and take a break. Although we all know people that are just blasting it all year round.
Yeah.
And they're not winning it. They're not winning anything, but they're doing it. But you know, but 6 weeks. Then I think to myself, well, what else could we use from an anabolic input for 6 weeks? That would be a good training aid. What's gonna in 6 weeks gonna not really do that much damage. It's not going to cause any of the cognitive side effects, which is one thing I do find with a lot of people with the Tren is, unless you're super chill and calm and you are right with yourself, you're probably not going to be in a good spot mentally. For a lot of people, it's just something to be very cautious of, right? So I'm thinking, well, if you just want something to break a plateau in the off season, if we get into the end of a few mesocycles, the progress is starting to slow a little bit, but you're not quite ready for that big deload. What are we looking at here that we could potentially do for 4 weeks and break through a little bit of a plateau and do as least amount of damage as possible, still feel good? I would probably lean towards an Anavar. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like even orals in the off season, we're talking about Anavar here. Like a low dose Anavar pre-workout for a few weeks to break a plateau, get a little bit of that last few percent out of your off season, that mesocycle that you're in right now, then take a deload, chill, relax, reset, go again. That's probably what I would lean towards. Tren would be the absolute last resort for me, even in a prep,
Yeah.
Even a last resort there. If you don't need it, like if you don't get a massive, cosmetic benefit from it towards the back end of a prep, there's probably more things that you can do that aren't going to cause as much damage.
Yeah, I agree there. And I think you touched on some good things, Aaron. Like, why are you using each one to do it? Obviously, it's a question and you can't give the full context, but it's like, what are you trying to get at? Because Aaron, you mentioned like modafinil and other nootropics like lion's mane. You mentioned Anavar. All these things have a similar effect with cognition. Like, what are you wanting to get out of the Tren? Like you said with the growth hormone, I think first look at what you want to get
beast
out.
Mode.
And like,
everyone wants beast mode.
Yeah, beast mode. Just fucking do injectable supergirl. I don't know.
Should literally be better off.
Yeah. So yeah, what are you trying to get out of? If you're just trying to go hard in the gym, like there's so many ways to do that where you'll probably feel it more. I mean, you don't take like 150 milligrams, you'll feel that mentally Tren, but like you take 35, 50 milligrams of Tren, like you're probably not going to feel that as much as like modafinil, injectable superdraw, and or Anavar and insulin or something like that pre-workout. Like you'll get a bigger pump and more of a neurological drive from that. So yeah, if it's just for pre-workout, I would go with that. Save the Tren if you need it during like a contest, bro.
Yeah. I've also done the same thing with clients as well, with the same as the growth hormone. When there's those clients that just keep asking questions, keep asking about the Tren. What about what does it do? How does it feel? What about this? What about that? I've got some in the cupboard, but I'm thinking about, I don't know, at some point they're just going to start taking it anyway and just not tell me. And I'm like, all right, put it in for a couple of weeks and you tell me if it's an amazing game changer. And 9 times out of 10, it's a massive disappointment. It's like, is that it? It's like, this is not the time and the place. It's a very time and a place drug.
The worst part about that is people will think, well, I'm not seeing anything, right? Like if they're doing this on their own, they say, okay, well, I'll just throw a little bit in and see what it does. It's like, well, I'm not seeing anything, so I need to increase the dose. And there's been this massive resurgence of like 500, 600, 800 milligrams of trenbolone doses per week suddenly. And it's like, this shit is just outrageous, man. Like me and Aaron, funny enough, we were just talking about this prior to starting the live, how if his sleep is, deviated at all from the norm, his weight goes in reverse and scales back up when he's trying to do fat loss. And so it's like, if you're taking one thing and it's absolutely destroying your sleep, it's destroying your relationship at home, it's, it's just like, what are you really doing effectively? And is it actually making that much of a difference? Probably not.
Yeah. And I was going to say, like Aaron, you mentioned, like, try it, because all of us, we're speaking from experience here. I've tried 35 milligrams a week in the off season. Still fuck my health markers. I've tried it with clients who will, again, as you said, bugging me about it. So I was like, okay, let's throw it in 35, 50 milligrams a week. I think every single person, at least in my experience that I've worked with, myself included, it's just fucked our health markers, made it so much worse. Is there going to be that one person out there who's like, I take 100 milligrams of Tren a week and my health markers are fine? Sure. Maybe that is that person. Maybe they do exist. Maybe you're that person, but you're never really going to know until you try. But I would say on the probability of things, based on our experience, based on what we know theoretically, you'll probably try to be like, okay, I'm not going to do it again.
Yeah. Agreed. I think the consensus here on Tren is everything else is almost a better option.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not the unicorn.
It's just
Shay
so
Harlow
cool.
asks, "What up, boys? How are y'all? What are y'all thought? Why is everyone saying y'all today? This shit's weird. What are y'all's thoughts on EQ in general and the ratio it should be ran with testosterone?"
I guess I'll start off because I'm currently using it.
Yeah, true.
I quite like EQ. I do think it gets a bad rap on liver and kidney toxicity, but as we always say, test your blood work, see what it looks like. So far, my lab work has come across absolutely fine, even with my clotting factors, even with hematocrit, red blood cell count. So I think EQ is a good option. Okay, in terms of the ratio, should be run with testosterone. It really depends. Like, how much do you aromatize? How that's one thing I like to do with clients is like what I would just call like receptor mapping, or basically just checking their level of aromatization. Some individuals take like 50 milligrams of a DHT derivative and it crushes their estradiol. I literally have a guy like that right now, where he's running like 500 milligrams of testosterone, 50 milligrams of Primo, and his estradiol is in range. So he's just really sensitive to that. So that question is going to be, it depends to your blood work. But EQ in general, okay, I believe it was in New Zealand, a study on rabbits, I believe, where they basically saw potential some liver/kidney toxicity with EQ. But again, those were animal studies they were extrapolating. Am I saying it's completely safe for human use? No. Okay, there's been no FDA or medical usage of EQ. But I think it's one of those compounds where if you respond well to it or you don't respond well to DHT derivative, it's something to consider. And you can run it. It just is very long ester. Okay, so it does take a while. So I would say you're not running this for 6 to 8 weeks. It's more like 12, 16, and so forth. It does, for some individuals, increase hematocrit, red blood cell count a fair bit. So you might have to look at taking like an P6 or Neotental to sort of try to reduce iron absorption and thus red blood cell production. You can use it therapeutic phlebotomies, blood donations. But again, now I'm just going into a tangent on like mitigating side effects. Long story short, I think it's a good option for some. It depends on the circumstances.
1000%. I love it. I think it, to be completely transparent, it's my favorite anabolic when I am cutting or pushing weight up and doing anything Muay Thai. I love the shit. I think it rocks my socks. And I've never really seen a lot of what people tend to say about EQ as far as like the negative sort of like kidney things, hepatotoxic things, red blood cell production. I've never seen erythrocytosis happen to any such a degree that's like concerning. I love it. I honestly do think it's one of the better compounds out there that we can take. And it is one that I personally love. I usually don't think of ratios when I'm thinking about androgens. I just think about total androgen load and what's required for someone to grow. So I don't think there is like a perfect ratio. In fact, I think it's just how do you respond, as Adam was saying, to this certain series of compounds, and then let's execute based on that response. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm outnumbered here by 2 EQ junkies, so I can't. And I've never tried it, so this is one that's it's on the list of things to try, mate. You know me, I've got a long list of experiments to still run, but there's a time and a place, and in prep is not the time and the place to run a new compound. From what I've seen, yeah, like it's as good as any other drug. Individual response, typically like from people that have a bit more of an intensity, maybe cardiovascular wise input into their day-to-day routines, fighters, people that like to just have a little bit more demand from that point of view, seem to benefit well from it. The only negatives that I have not consistently, just seen a little bit more than others, is just mental. Like if you're not mentally dialed in already, if you're already a little bit not quite right, like you got a lot of anxiety, ADHD issues, whatever going on in your life, sometimes EQ can potentially not be the best choice. It's gonna play games with you. But then again, I'm speaking from like things I've heard and a couple of cases. The vast majority, yeah, it's fine. It's as good as anything else. Titrate it intelligently, find your sweet spot. Probably don't go from 0 to 2 grams and hope for the best. Is probably not the best idea in the world. And yeah, you know, just titrate fine, and then you'll very quickly figure out, yeah, this is good. I like it. It feels good. It's giving me good results. And you just go through the normal intelligent design process, and that's that. Like with anything else. But what I would ask you guys is, in a prep scenario, because of the ester length and the clearance times, what would you? Is this something that you would typically say, well, we're going to run this all the way through? Or
for me, what I would do is I usually start at a pretty significantly high dose out the gate, and it's usually like transitioning into prep. We kind of did like a maintenance phase for 2 to 3 weeks and then transition into prep. And I'm like, usually at the first onset of prep, I'm really aggressive, getting as much of that sort of water retention and fat I can off right away, so that higher dose of androgens there kind of aids in that process and conserves what muscle tissue we can. And then I take it out after, 6 or so weeks, depending on how long the prep is, and then reevaluate the compounds, usually switching to like obviously more prep oriented compounds. But then obviously it has that long tail, so you get that extra added sort of androgen on the back end that's still contributing to the total amount of androgens you're taking.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of those as well where if you're trying it for the first time, just be prepared to do some frequent blood work. I think the more data you can collect on this, so if as a first time input, when you're testing EQ, just get frequent blood work done, at least for the first few months, like at least maybe once a month or something like that. And just tick your boxes, just make sure you're good. And then you're probably in for a safe, clear ride.
Yeah.
Yeah. Take your blood pressure. I mean, the first time I ran EQ was a bit of a shit show. I didn't actually realize how much it would increase my red blood cell count too much, to the point that, fun story, I was engaged in sexual relations with my current partner, and this was after very early on. And long story short, I sprayed the entire bedroom with blood because blood was all coming out my nose.
To say something else. Oh my god! I jizzed like 3 liters, bro.
EQ is great.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe that would be more impressive, but I kind of just shocked her. She's like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" Then I kind of, at that point in time, actually had to explain. Because I hadn't spoken about steroids at that point. In fact, it was quite insulting. She thought I was natural, and then it made me a whole question my entire life. But she also thought the Rock was natural at that time. She really knew nothing. So I was like, fuck, fine, okay. But I had to sort of explain the whole situation. But yeah, dude, I sprayed blood all over the bedroom.
From where?
My nose. My nose just started bleeding. Like I was getting hectic nosebleeds, and then realized that, oh shit, like I haven't done any blood. Hematocrit must be super high. It wasn't actually that high. I think it was only like 56, I would say. But when I go test it, but that was after donating blood, so it might have been even higher from that. So I had to get therapeutic phlebotomy as well. But long story short, that's because I wasn't checking blood pressure as frequently as I should. Wasn't doing the monthly blood work, and red blood cell count went through the roof. And sprayed the bedroom with blood out of my nose. It was the most aggressive nosebleeds I ever had. So yeah, fun times.
That's wild, man. I've done that on Nandrolone. It wasn't like spraying, but it was like a pretty aggressive nosebleed, and I was like, "This is." I can't even begin to explain why this is happening because you wouldn't understand. But this is happening. Julian Mendez asks, "Low dose Clen year round. Can you explain the benefits and possible downsides?" Me and Adam talked on this one last week, I believe, and we talked about like low dose clenbuterol maybe being useful, and low dose being like literal micro doses of clenbuterol, like 10 to 20 micrograms for a female could be possibly an anabolic agent, but for a male it wouldn't really serve a purpose. I don't feel like, unless this individual was highly undermuscled and needed that extra beta 2 stimulus to create a little bit more muscle protein synthesis. But ultimately, I don't think for most people the trade-off is worth it, meaning elevated heart rates and in general like more of a sympathetic state, kind of that fight or flight state being revved 24/7. I don't think it's necessarily ideal.
Yeah, no, agreed for sure. I think the length of a prep, let's say you're walking into anywhere between a 40 and 20 week prep, and that Clen at any kind of moderate to high dose you just can't handle it, then a low dose 20 micrograms throughout the whole duration of prep can actually be pretty beneficial if you're checking those things that you just said, making sure that you are able to sort of bring yourself back down into a bit of a parasympathetic state, making sure your heart rate isn't just completely elevated the whole time. I think I've seen a nice little easy entry level dose at like 20 be side effect free enough for someone to run that a bit longer. And yeah, like you said, for females, yeah, I'm all for it. Like a little 10 microgram dose can be really, really beneficial as long as everything's managed accordingly.
Yeah, I agree. To piggyback on that, like I would say for an enhanced male who's doing more than TRT, almost always I would say no to running it year round. But they'll be like, what are you trying to achieve?
If you're on gear, it's just unnecessary.
Yeah, exactly. But what are the situations where that could work? As we mentioned, a female, okay, we know clenbuterol might have some slight anabolic or, slight anti-catabolic, or maybe even slight anabolic effects. Yes, these studies are in rodents. Okay, we've got no human studies, I believe, showing, any sort of anabolic effect from clenbuterol, but there might be that. So for a female who doesn't want to, have PEDs which cause viralization, you can run, I think, year-round, as Aaron said, about 20 micrograms, enough where it doesn't affect resting heart rate, enough where they don't have any sort of mental side effects, but that can be quite individual. Then the only other circumstance where I've actually included it is like the Natty Plus stack, where I've had guys come to me like, well, I don't want to take testosterone, and then the question is why, but for whatever reason they're adamant on not taking testosterone. They're like, devise me the ultimate Natty Plus stack where I'm not affecting my pituitary gland or causing negative feedback with my testosterone. I'm like, okay, sure, if I have to. And then I basically give them a whole list of compounds which don't cause any effect on sex hormones, and usually clenbuterol is in there. But usually those guys end up taking testosterone anyway. So those are the only circumstances I would think.
Yeah. And also just year round, always the question, there's not many things you should be taking year round. Like it's a very hard thing to justify. Like, why do you need to do anything year round except for, eating and sleeping and drinking water, and maybe in some cases, like keep your testing. But even that would come down to, a TRT or a cruise dose at some point. Like doing anything year round except for your health subs, exercise, maybe some cardio. It's just seems overkill for any situation. Like nothing should be run year round.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I mean, the only argument I would make for year-round stuff is bioidentical hormones, as you mentioned. Testosterone, maybe growth hormone. Insulin, I would say like no, because that's kind of as needed. But I guess you could use Humalog pre-workout year-round and should be fine. But other than that, that's like found in your body. Like, don't run Tren year-round. Don't run Primo. Don't run Clen. Like, take breaks.
Yeah, it's just not necessary.
This one, I'm going to be honest, I don't know much about. Any ideas about the accuracy of a finger prick E2 blood test? Easier to do in his specific country.
No idea.
Yeah, I've heard some skepticism behind those blood tests. I don't actually know how legitimized they are. There was a company that came out a while back that was completely fraudulent. That was based on fingerprints, but I think it wasn't necessarily the finger prick itself. I think it was just the business model of saying we can test everything with a finger prick. I think there is some things to be tested with a finger prick, but I just feel like comparison wise, the 1 to 2 milliliters of blood they're pulling to test for just estrogen isn't really going to have, like when you compare that to just a drop of blood, I feel like there's just not enough sample size there, but I could be wrong. I don't know.
I'm looking at a test now, actually. I think it might be big in the UK, at least because it's in pounds. The at-home fingerprint test for males and female wants to test estradiol. My first thought, even though I've never done this testing myself or even looked into it in a great deal, would be not accurate, because we know when it comes to regular testing of estradiol, you have the regular assay, which I forget what it's called, and you get LCMS testing. We know that typically for bodybuilders, we want to prioritize or typically do LCMS testing because anything like Trembolo and AR can skew those results. So if we know from our regular, blood work testing that we actually need to get a more sensitive assay to get accurate results, I would surmise off that a fingerprint test would be the least accurate, in which case you'll get, massively skewed results. So if you're taking like an AI and testosterone, if you take an AI and any sort of thing that can skew estradiol, it's going to come back inaccurate unless you do LCMS testing. So I would say, unless you just run testosterone by itself, probably not going to be the most accurate test.
Yeah. In the UK, like you said, there's a lot of places doing the finger prick stuff now because they're doing like the convenience home delivery kind of do it yourself testing kits and stuff, which is better than nothing. But when the blood is not directly from the vein, that does make a difference. And there's more room for contamination, which can skew results and things like that as well. So, you know, in general, it's I would just say you could probably get the home testing kits for convenience, but then go to your local GP and ask the pharmacist to draw from the vein for you or something like that. There must be some way, you know, maybe you know a nurse that you can, you know, throw them a few bucks to come and draw from the vein for you. Because you can select that. Is it a finger prick test or is it going to be you know, from the vein? And they'll send you the appropriate testing kits. So maybe that's an option for this guy. I'm not really sure, but
hey,
it's better than nothing. But like Adam said as well, the amount of variables to consider based on everything else that you might be taking.
Yeah, I think, you know, as you would just look at it from a face value. I think finger pricks could be seen as like the inferior blood sample because if you think about it, like the more accurate test result would be going to a controlled laboratory, getting a venous sample drawn, having a phlebotomist draw it, and then having it sent to a full service laboratory that is able to accurately assess that serum blood work.
Yeah.
Versus an at-home test where the point of contact is you're independently doing this test. And I believe this could be totally wrong, but in at least America, because it's like you're having this shipped to your house and it's being done at home, the FDA is less regulated in terms of what they're saying it needs to be upheld to in terms of like testing accuracy compared to a laboratory test where there's like full service staff there who are trained and gone to school to do these kind of things. I just feel like it's a little bit iffy in terms of what you get from it. So this is just my 2 cents. I don't know if it's accurate or not. That's completely opinion based, but
well, think of it this way, right? When you do your blood glucose, okay, how many times have you gotten an incorrect reading? Probably quite often, at least I have. And often sometimes I think my blood glucose is shit, and then I go to do like a serum insulin test, home IR, and I'm like, oh, insulin sensitivity is actually fine. HbA1c is well within range. Oh, it's actually accurate. So much so that I get annoyed with testing my blood glucose. I usually test it quite a few times to see if it is accurate. So I don't think so. He did actually respond at the bottom. What if I pull blood and send that in with the fingerprint test? I think it doesn't change it because you are still. What really matters is how the lab is testing it. That I think what matters. Taking a finger draw, I think, as Aaron said, more chance for contaminants, more chance of variables. But then, how are they testing? As I said, are they doing a sensitive LCMS testing, or are they just doing standard estradiol testing? I think that matters. How are they testing the sample?
Yeah, and that just sounds like a fucking nightmare, man. Trying to just IV your blood out and then pour it onto this sample. Crazy.
I don't know where you live, man, but like, unless you're in some really arbitrary country which doesn't have good medical services, shit, man. Most countries that I have clients in, which is like pretty much most of the world, there's like online pathology labs who just send you a script and you just walk into the pathology clinic and get your blood drawn. Like,
book a holiday to Thailand, little medical vacation. Get all your testing done here for dirt cheap, and then go home again. But hey, if you're not a trained nurse and you don't know exactly what you're doing when it comes to pulling IV, you do not go anywhere near your veins. Let's make that very clear. All right, don't mess around with that.
That shit's sketchy. Absolutely.
I've heard.
Nurses make it look easy, but do not do it.
Even nurses, fuck it. I had one nurse puncture a vein, like go through it both ends, and my arm swelled up and got turned. You know what it looks like the internal bleeding and hemorrhaging. It's just like turns black, and it's like, dude. After that, I never would want to experiment. I remember back in the day, Boston Lloyd would often talk about like intravenously injecting insulin and growth hormone. I could never, man. Like just the thought of like sterility, and then what if I fucking miss and you could collapse a vein, like block an artery. Like there's so many dangerous components to doing that. It's just a horrible idea.
I've only done that once, injecting growth hormone, and I did it with me, a nurse who was kind of watching over us but couldn't legally do it. And Steve did it for me. But I have got the mother of all veins here.
That's big fucker.
Throw the syringe from 6 feet away, and you wouldn't miss. So it's a very easy target. Because we were testing some growth hormone, like the 4 minutes before drawing. Intravenously. So and that was all in a lab, sterile environment with all the proper equipment and everything, not just a couple of guys in the gym bathroom. So I've done it once and got away with it, but I still wouldn't ever do it again because it's just not necessary. Go and hire a nurse to do it. There's private nurses everywhere.
Yeah, good point.
Agreed.
All right, Shay Harlow asks, I keep hearing Jordan Oakley, which if you're hearing him, you should just plug your ears, go off about anything less than 1,500 milligrams is a waste of time. I don't really fuck with bro, but is there any merit to the statement?
That's what small people say.
Yeah.
Small people say the funniest things.
You don't need, like, especially, okay, so like if you're in your later ends of your career, like if you're 250, 260, 270 plus, oh shit,
what's up?
Look what we got here. What's up, Jared?
What's up, fellas?
Oh, what's up, man?
I happened to check the thing in time.
Well, Jared, I was going to say, you saw Dr. Marquesh? Is that it?
Yeah. Saw what?
Did you pop in because you saw there was a Dr. Mark question?
Oh, I didn't. I literally just clicked on our WhatsApp and then I was like, "Hey, let's get up on here.
Let's pull it up."
I'll let you answer that one.
Why do you think Mike Israetel can never get in condition? That's this guy's question.
Why can't he get in condition? Is that what the question was?
Yeah. Why can't he never get in condition? Is his question.
Oh, he can. You should see him in person. He's very conditioned. He really is a water buffalo. It's crazy, but he could die, 4 or 5 more weeks and be even leaner.
Yeah. Do you think it's worth it at the point for him? Does he get stringy after that?
Yeah, 100%. It's quite wild, but he really is like as far as I've probably coached over Jesus Christ 500 plus people at this point, and he really is one of top 2 or 3 most watery people I've ever coached in my fucking life. Like getting the water off that guy, it would take someone like Neil, who understands Lasix to like an insane degree, to help Mike get that shit off because it's wild.
That's wild, dude.
Yeah,
that's crazy. It's interesting because he looks like he's kind of in the off season, at least from the pictures I see, what he posted on Instagram. It looks like he's relatively drier, like he's kind of got that Caucasian dry. You wouldn't expect that to translate into the prep.
Yeah, and I think he has a lot of crazy ideas. Here's the real big issue. He has a lot of crazy ideas of what he thinks gets the water off of him. And whenever he says Jared coaches me, he listens to about 30% of what I say. So I told him, Mike, from now on, you're not putting my name under your post because you're not a reflection. So he'll say, I know for a fact this thing does this for me. And I'm like, Mike, you don't know that because there were 6 other variables going on at that point in time.
Right.
He just won't take the time to listen to, hey, let's modify these couple of things and see what happens with the body weight and the water and how often you pee, blah, blah, blah. And he just doesn't want to take the time because it's so much effort into that and away from RP work that he's just like, fuck this. Mm-hmm. So I basically have fully convinced him, like, let's just stop this for a while.
Yeah.
Let's keep working and hypertrophy work and YouTube and.
Right.
It's a pretty mental schedule as well to try and prep.
Right.
Like,
yeah, it's a lot.
It's not really a realistic thing, is it, without having to take some serious workload off?
100%.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
I don't know how he does it, man. I admire him. Like, I do YouTube and I can barely keep up with like a third of what he's posting. It's impressive as shit.
Yeah.
Yes, man. And you guys just hit the 2 million mark. Since you were here, it was only just over 1 million, and then in another space of time, it's mental.
And I think it's already at like 2.2 or some shit.
That's wild.
It's growing, man. People love dick jokes, I guess,
Yeah, the dick jokes are great. They're fucking great. Do you want us to keep throwing questions up, Jared?
Oh, I don't. Yeah, if you guys, I want to hear you guys answer some. I'm here to judge you guys and get it harder, like an erection. Hearing Aaron talk about ease.
Well, this guy asked, basically, Jordan Oakley was talking about anything less than 1,500 milligrams of total androgens is a waste of time. He doesn't really fuck with them, but is there any merit to the statement?
No.
Who the fuck
Well,
said
I'm on
that?
less than 1,500 megs, and I'm bigger than all those guys.
I was gonna say what? I got a pro card on 800, so I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah. Well, that's
Yeah.
the thing, right? Jordan Oakley's like this guy. You don't know Jordan Oakley? Oh man, he's this fucking guy. I think he just does it for virality, but he pontificates these crazy cycles, right? He says everyone's lying about the cycles that they're on, even if they state what they are, and that they're taking much more, right? And so like he'll say like, oh, this guy's on 3 grams. He said that Paul was on something like 5 grams of total androgens, and he was lying about taking, whatever he took. So yeah, I wouldn't listen to that guy at all. There's absolutely no merit to that. I think
These guys need to stop obsessing about what other people are taking and just go to the fucking gym.
Yeah, just go to the fucking gym.
They're just scrolling the gram all day long and wondering.
It's actually wild. I recently was going to do that push to the open, and there's a fatigue cost that comes with pharmacology that people don't really talk about too often. And once I got above 2 grams, it actually was doing my physique worse because of the body weight, the sleep, lacking of sleep, and the fatigue from the farm that I was on. So actually, I mean, I went north of 1.5 quite a bit, and I looked worse. I now am on half of what I was on, and probably the biggest and leanest I've ever been in my life. So the farm can actually begin to work against your physiology quite a bit. That's a wild statement. I don't know why the hell anyone would say that.
Yeah, I have
we've seen that a lot recently. It's massive, and people just think the whole argument of more is more. Yeah, you just take more gear, you keep growing. Like that's what it says. That's what the books say. And it's like you just the individual response every time. Some people might need a little bit more to get the job done, but then my very harsh opinion on that is, if you're one of these guys that says I need this amount of gear to grow, you probably shouldn't. You should choose a different sport, bro. There's guys like, oh yeah, it took 5 or 6 grams to get to this size, and it's like, well, I keep hearing that on various different places, and I've never met a single bodybuilder or pro that took 5 or 6 grams for a consistent amount of time to get to pro level size. That's just nonsense talk. Like the vast majority of pros and people I know in all divisions, like we're talking like anywhere up to sort of between 1 gram and 2 grams would be a sort of realistic input for stretches of time. But then there's a lot of these guys are like, nah, most of the time I run less than 1 gram or 1,200 megs or whatever it might be, something. But these crazy numbers in the 3, 4, 5, 6 grams, I don't know where they're coming from. I think some people have probably tried these in short bursts of time just to see. Like I've tried up to 3 grams for a short period of time to see if there's any massive difference.
How'd that feel?
Yeah.
Just average at best. I'm kind of a bit of an outlier. Like nothing really messes with me too much. But I definitely didn't see any massive increases in results, not at all. So yeah, I mean, like for right now, I'm on like 750 total, just cruising along, and I look pretty freaking damn good. So it's it's one of them.
Yeah,
your updates have been wild, man.
Yeah,
it's getting there. Well, I'll probably put in a little bit more next week, but I'm not going to be blasting fucking 5 or 6 grams, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And we've all seen what happens with the dudes who do that, unfortunately, and the outcomes that can happen because of doing some shit like that. You have to be so damn careful. I mean, so
you got to be careful of what you say as well, because some people are so easily influenced. We've seen it firsthand, right? There's a lot of talk about this person did this person did that, and it's like they did that for like a couple of months to experiment. That's not what they did the whole time to get where they are. And they think, well, they did that, so I need that. And they forget that, wait a minute, you've just grown a whole bunch of muscle on way less. Why? At what point are you thinking that you need more at this stage? You're growing just fine. But then it's one of those things, isn't it? Addictive personality, stuff like that. It's so enticing, but it can be very, very dangerous. So yeah, I don't know who this Jordan Oakley guy is, but yeah, those kinds of statements are just dumb.
Yeah, short answer to a long-winded thing. No merit.
No, you don't need that.
Wisdom.
This guy asks, Ian Montgomery asks, I've heard mixed things about prolonged use of melanotan. Is this retarded melatonin? Yeah, okay.
I think he's talking about melatonin, the sleep stuff.
Okay, melatonin is what he actually typed. What do you think about continuous use of 10 to 20 milligrams versus occasionally? So like continually using 10 to 20 milligrams of melatonin, I'd assume every night versus, infrequently.
Well, I'd say this, Kolton and Jared, you both need a consistent use of melanotan. Pale as fuck.
I knew the joke was coming.
Right, you got whiter. You both got whiter. How's that even possible?
Yeah.
You're gonna have the
I'm in
bloody
that
KKK
nice
membership
yellow light,
membership.
so Kolton looks whiter than me right now.
I'm fucking a ghost, dude. There's nothing I can do to hide it. It's just what it is. It's just who I am.
But yeah, melatonin, long-term use. Yeah, I don't think it's. I know people that do it, but I think Steve actually did a megadose kind of experiment on this and saw some build-up of negatives there that are probably not going to be beneficial for your sleep in the long run. I think sleep, if you're doing it just because you need good sleep, there's a lot of other sort of underlying habits that need to be formed first in your sleep hygiene, your scheduling, just other over-the-shelf supplementation, get that in place. Food, pre-bed food can be massive person to person, high carb, low carb, high fat, low fat. All of these different things I would be playing around with first. And then if you need a little something to keep you in to put you to sleep or keep you in sleep, then the fast acting, slow acting options, choose accordingly. And it's still something that I probably wouldn't use all year round, like that last question. It's just
I think the prolonged use thing is only really detrimental when you start looking at a lot of these over-the-counter supplements that are doing shit like 10 to 20 milligrams in one fucking dose. Shit's wild. Like 1 to 3 is clinical use for melatonin, I believe. And generally that's relatively safe for most people to continue if it is helping with their deep sleep, REM sleep, things like that. But it is something that's supposed to be supplemental, obviously. So we gotta, like Aaron said, make sure that you're taking into consideration your sleep hygiene. That's the most important thing before you're ever introducing any type of shit like this. It's like we're not taking anabolic steroids and not going to the gym. You know what I mean? I'm trying to go to the gym first. So
lay off the year-round Tren. Lay off the Tren.
Is this the same guy? No, it isn't.
No.
Yeah, I was gonna say same thing as you guys just mentioned. Like my question would be like, well, why that high of a dose? Like, have you needed that because potentially you neglect other things with your sleep hygiene? And then like, what are you trying to get out of it? Like I said, are you using that to counteract negative effect from certain anabolics, like Trenbolone? Are you doing it because you're not getting enough sleep and maybe you have to look at adjusting your schedule? Look at along those lines before introducing it, because like Jared was saying, like shit, I use like 3 milligrams occasionally if need be, and that seems to work more than enough for myself. Most clients, I don't think I've ever used over 6 milligrams as they get really drowsy and groggy in the morning. I'm sure some people use 10, but then the question is like, why are you using 10, and also why you need to use it that consistently? I think those questions, maybe look into that and think, okay, is this appropriate?
Yeah, there's also something to be said about like the pineal gland, the pineal gland, and like the inhibition of the secretion.
Work that gland before you go to bed.
Yeah, that'll definitely put your ass to sleep.
There you go, done.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah.
All right, Benny Parcher asks, if I wanted to start GH, is it important to get checked for cancer first?
It's a good idea.
No, yeah, knowing a family history is really smart too.
Yeah.
I mean, you should probably do that at some point anyway. So it's as good a time as any, right? If you're going to
it's a good point. You're going to get your colon checked when you're above your 30s, going into your 40s. You're going to get your prostate checked. You might as well just get the whole thing done.
Yeah, and it's not just cancer either. It's like make sure they're checking for tumors of any kind, cancerous, non-cancerous, both.
Yes. Yeah, tumors, growths, cancers can all be accelerated by growth hormone use. So typically, as Jared said, family history, get checked. I know some of the blood work when it comes to taking cancer markers can sometimes be a bit skewed. So look into what form of testing you're doing when it comes to cancer markers. But generally, you'd want to get checked because family history or even anything pre-existing that you currently may or may not have, we want to check, as that can obviously be accelerated, which we don't want, obviously.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then we have the age-old question, generics versus pharma growth hormone. I'd love your all take on this.
No difference.
Yeah. I think relatively they're the same. I mean, it's just like you have to get a good quality underground lab
conditions,
and you're going to get the same effect. It's growth hormone is growth hormone. There's not that much differentiation. I think it's just how it's it's created and especially transported is probably the biggest.
Yeah, I was gonna say the less transportation, the better. So if you have a fucking friend who can make you generics in a bathtub lab and it's damn good shit, that's a mile drive down the road. That's your best bet.
There's the guy.
You heard it here first from RP Strength. Bathtub pH is the way.
Jared is making growth hormone out of his bathtub. Go get him.
I'm not saying it was me per se, but when you guys come to the US,
it's a premium fee. Oh my god. So another question here, Sammy G. Should PED use during a cut be treated like the same as a bulk? Start with test, titrate up until sides, then lower dose, add a secondary androgen as necessary. I don't think so. I mean, I think in a prep you have less ability to synthesize new muscle tissue, so exponentially increasing and titrating up your androgens might not be necessary. Nor would I start low for the reason that I mentioned before, where usually out the gate in a prep, I get pretty aggressive because you have that runway to sort of pull water off, pull body fat off without being any kind of detrimental effect towards lean mass deprivation. So I think probably not for most people.
Yeah. So just give them all the standard sort of test mass scenario just as a bit of an example so they can kind of. So let's just say we're going. Just an easy example, you've got 500 megs of test, 500 megs of Masteron to start your prep. Just for simple numbers. You're not really going to be changing that throughout most of prep. Towards the back end of prep, you might start bringing that test down and pushing the Masteron up, but you're still going to end up with pretty much the same number. And then when the other little add-ons go in, if they're absolutely necessary, is where you're probably going to be, those titrations will happen, but they're not typically going to be titrations of the initial starting gear, in my opinion. Just for an easy example.
I agree. I think in a prep scenario, you're kind of using as much anabolics as you need to retain tissue. It's not a case of constantly or, just constantly titrating it up and up and up. I think, as much as you need to retain tissue. And then, sure, introducing sort of certain androgens that may have a specific cosmetic effect, DHT derivative, maybe a bit of Tren acting on the glucocorticoid receptor if you need it at the end. But really, it's like as much as you need to retain tissue, in my opinion. Like, you're not going to have a better outcome cosmetically or physique-wise by just eventually getting to 3 grams. In fact, it probably have a detrimental effect. So, you would approach it slightly differently, I would think.
Yeah, I have a bit of nuanced answer. I'd be interested to hear your guys' perspective on it. You guys are probably more farm experts than I am. But I think that because especially I do maintenance periods prior to a prep for most people, drugs and training volume correspond pretty directly. When you start a prep, especially after a maintenance period, the volume in the gym is quite lower and you're beginning to add in pharmacology again. So I take that first kind of mesocycle of the first 4 weeks of somebody's prep to be like in an area in which you would somewhat titrate that shit up a little bit, because there's nothing that you can do in the first week of your training that's going to require you to bump directly to 1,000 milligrams after you just came off of a maintenance period of drugs, training, and diet. If you're going into the gym week 1 of your prep and you need 1,000 milligrams, you probably just shot your fucking wad day 1 of returning to the gym after you did this little maintenance period. So starting the prep with a, nice little deficit or maybe even maintenance and slowly titrating the pharmacology in might be a good idea, especially if you're maintaining the maintenance nutrients that you had, because then you're kind of just recomping at the start of prep to begin with anyway. And you can titrate that up over the course of 4 to 6 weeks. And then you're at your, let's say that's you're doing 16-week prep. Now you have 10 weeks left. That's about whenever you're starting to add in maybe orals, or you're adding in at the beginning some of the alpha and beta adrenergic receptor modulators, Clen, Yohimbine, things like that. So there are things you can add in the beginning of prep that are slightly anabolic, like Clen, that aren't necessarily androgens, and you don't have to go to a peak load right away in the initial stages of a prep. That's if you are coming off of that, because most people are coming off a slightly lower volume period, I would say, when they're about to enter a prep. It's not just going max, cut. You know what I mean? So I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Yes, exactly what I'm doing right now. I'm just bridging from a little maintenance cruise section into the start of prep. And then it's the case of, for me personally, we're going to be a little bit more aggressive with the food and the dieting for the first 4 weeks to get the vast majority of the fluff off early, because I'm already at a fairly lean starting point. So we figure I'm in a position now, right now, health-wise, all health checks, bloods came back good. I've been on a pretty not low TRT cruise, but a cruise where it's just enough for me to be able to keep training output at this stage pretty good. And then I can just slowly titrate those doses in over this sort of first 4 to 5 weeks of the aggressive diet. So by the time that diet is finished, I'm fully loaded, everything's in place for muscle retention. And then at that point in my prep, I might even start introducing food and things back in, which will then correlate with the increased androgen load. And I might be in a position where that crazy looking recomp happens, midway through for a prep sort of environment. But yeah, stepping into like week 1 of prep if you were coming from off the back of a just like real maintenance cruise rest.
Yeah, I guess people in this field or industry call it the bridge, like you said. But
yeah, like I think it depends on like are you coming from completely off, deloaded, completely rested, very, very low volume training and then into prep, then absolutely. Yeah. If your training's already kind of at that maintenance sort of volume, then maybe, that should correlate probably with what you're taking and what you're eating, and all those things titrate accordingly.
Yeah, I would say after maintenance phase or deload, as you've said, Jared, you're pretty sensitive to potential growth. And I would say if you are using, growth hormone, insulin, anabolics, I think there is a chance for a bit of body recomp. Can I explain the exact mechanism of action of it? Probably not. But at least from the athletes I've coached, I mean, Kat's a good example. I mean, in her prep, if I go pull up photos of her first 5 weeks, she only lost 1 kilogram or 2.2 pounds, but she looked significantly leaner. And I would argue in that first 5 weeks, she was recomping because of that. And we had, basically no anabolics in play at that point. Everything was, as you said, basically clenbuterol, just lipolytic agents and a bit of growth hormone, and we saw that. So I do agree if you're coming from maintenance phase, that is the typical approach that I go. But many people don't do that. And I know many guys who go off-season prep. Okay, in that case, I would say you can probably just completely lower the dose because it's still going to be in your system for a couple of weeks. So you can literally just let it titrate down naturally, and then adjust or increase it as you are deeper into prep.
Yeah, for sure. What's that off-season endpoint as well, right? If you're finishing an off-season at like a rate for yourself, for a high dose for you, where do you go from there moving into a prep? You got to come down at some point. You got to give yourself a little bit of a runway.
Yeah,
right.
That's typically where, I mean, look, I don't think we do that with any of our clients, but that's typically when I get someone who's like, oh, I've just finished my off-season, can I do a prep with you? And it's like, oh, can we do a maintenance first? Like, no, I got 16 weeks. Like, oh, fuck, okay, let's go.
Yeah. Sucks. Jared, I got a question for you to kind of rebound off that. How high do you usually see training volume get in a prep for, now, even for yourself, let's just say?
Generally it's right in between. So you got to do a little more volume to maintain your muscle when you have less food, and you got to do a little less training volume because you don't have the recovery capabilities at the back end, because you're not going to be able to recover from the same shit you did when you were massing. So basically that MEV to MRV just decreases slightly, and it works the same way with pharmacology, because by the end of prep, your pharmacology is likely very similar to your massing or slightly higher because you are adding in orals and things of that nature. Like I've seen a lot of people in, like, let's say 100 milligrams more than they even had in their massing phase, but it's at the end of prep because they're like, oh, okay, well now I'm going to add in Halo during these last 10 days and I'm going to do this and this and whatever the fuck. But that's not the time to fuck with that much volume. So even then you're still artificially capping that a little bit.
Okay.
Yep. And then as a further add-on, what are your opinion during prep on intensity modifiers, and then even having them in the first place or pulling them at a certain point if you do have them in? How do you typically approach, like, my rep sets, supersets? Do you see a lot of people will be like, oh, I'm losing strength. Okay, let me throw in a lot of intensity modifiers to sort of make up for that stimulus. I guess what are your thoughts around that?
Oh, I mean, I have a pretty well mapped out periodization model that I've done for quite some time, because for some reason there's like thought going around that metabolites, metabolic byproducts of muscle contraction, things of that nature, they don't have this independent stimuli. I don't know if you guys are aware of who Dr. Cody Hahn is, but he's done research where he's directly injected metabolites into cells, and they've significant growth has occurred. There's multiple studies on this. So that paired with the fact that whenever you are in a deep dieting phase, you are in this scenario where you've been training with high volumes for a long time, you've been dieting for a very long time. Both of those stimuli physiologically are rather similar in such that they do start to shift the fiber type characteristics inside of you. So there's proteins that unravel inside of your muscle fibers that then make them a little more slow twitch or fast twitch. So they become a little more slow twitch. Because of that, you're able to produce less force. You have less glycogen, so you can perform less reps. You know, you still have the creatine and everything in, but it's just something that's unavoidable, especially toward the end of prep. So I think that if you can get the client away from weight on the bar, especially when you're adding in Tren, Halo, things of that nature, because that is helping you. I think Winstraw as well. And Masteron is actually a little bit better for force production than Primo, I believe. So I've seen clients on a lot of Masteron who are like, oh, I'm fucking strong right now. And I'm like, chill the fuck out. So getting them away from either one, realizing that they are becoming a little weaker, because most people will, or two, realizing that they're really fucking strong right now and they could blow their shit off, is smart. So 6-8 weeks out, I begin to sprinkle in those intensity techniques. The what do you guys call them? Intensifiers. I've seen that on the internet a lot. And then close to the show, there's a fuckload of that shit. There's a lot of isolation before heavy compound. There's a lot of intensity techniques. There's some drop sets. There's all kinds of shit like that. I think the bros had that shit right back in the day. You know what I mean? They're like, hey, I'm getting close to the show. Let's fucking do some pump work. I don't think that's a bad idea at all. I think it's really fucking smart. People saying that weight on the bar is the only thing that matters, maintain that through the prep, are likely putting people at risk of potentially getting injured, because I'm not trying to bench 405 for 15, which I've done in a mass, when I'm 225 and shredded. I think that would be the dumbest shit fucking possible. Like, okay, well, I did 405 or 405 for 15 when I was massed, and now I'm on a little more drugs because in a prep and Halo and this, and I'm producing more force. Let's go for 16. Fuck it. Why not? That is dumb as fuck. I think that people who say weight on the bar, and you know, this is including for naturals. I coached over 30 to 50 naturals to pro cards, because I get this fucking conversation all the time. Well, it's different for naturals. It's weight on the bar. Weight on the bar. I'm like, no, it's not. It works the same. Getting them away from that thought process of the weight has to be the same, and slowly trickling that stuff in, I think, is smarter for most people. I am very unaware of anything that could sway me in the other direction at this point, as far as the research goes.
Yep.
Very good.
So more masked, more drop sets. Cool. Got it.
Bingo.
Done. Yeah.
There we go.
I mean, the way I think about it is like total stimulus, and total stimulus is not just weight on the bar, repetitions, load, volume, mechanical tension, as you said, metabolites from, intensity techniques. And if we can sort of maintain that, not drop it too much on prep, because as I like at least to see with most of my clients, like not a huge drop off, in training performance, if we call that, and training performance, not necessarily just weight on the bar, but all other variables there too. So that if we can use an intensity modifier at the end, I think that is beneficial, because as you said, like, you just try and keep them safe. That's the same thing. I don't want people going for PRs, doing crazy heavy loads, like, a couple weeks out. That's, as you said, how you blow your shit off.
Yeah. And the reason I don't have them in the entire prep is because, like I said, we're training with high volumes, we're dieting really hard. The more metabolites you accumulate and the more you're doing things that require more of a slow twitch effort, the faster those adaptations occur. So then you get into a situation where you potentially could lose muscle. Let's say you're doing a 20-week prep and you've done fucking intensity techniques the whole way through. That's probably where I would see somebody run into a situation where, they could lose muscle toward the end of prep, or they could feel really fucking weak, and that could get in their head, and they could start, all kinds of things. So I think at the beginning of prep, it is absolutely okay to focus on the load. Like, I got to make sure that I'm maintaining my strength, in this rep range with this exercise, whatever it may be. And then as the prep goes on, changing those exercises with slight variation, like, hey, we're actually close gripping on the Smith machine this mesocycle. Just so you know, we're not doing the wide grip, which you're stronger at. So just keep that in mind. And the client's like, oh, fuck, that's right. So then they're not trying to go for fucking 405, because the close grip, they're doing 365. So little things like that, I think, help quite a bit.
I love that answer,
Yep.
actually. Okay, just to get a couple of these questions out of the way. Ray Mammo asks, why is my face always bloated with E2 in check, even on TRT? My face looks like I'm overweight when I'm 15% body fat.
Because you're not.
Yeah.
Because you're 25% body fat, you fat bastard.
Even 15% is like maybe a bit too much for me personally, even in an off season. If you're a bodybuilder, right? Like I think that's a bit too much. That's probably why, to be fair.
Whenever someone says I'm 15% body fat, they're usually miles off. Let's get that right first.
Yeah.
When people try to guess their body fats, it's like, dude, no, you're fatter than that. So that might be the case here. If not, then the first thing I would go to here is mineral balance and water intake, getting that right. Water retention off the back of poor mineral balance is usually the case.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're not in charge of your genetics either. You could just store more water there. Like a lot of Asian people just have fucking moon face all the time. So I have some Asian friends that are like 2 weeks out, you look at their physique, you're like, holy shit, you look at their face, they're just, moon face. It is what it is.
Shout out to Chris right now.
I was about to say Chris is so like that too. He has to get really lean to actually see it in his face.
Classic Asian moon face. It's just coming off now, actually, though. He's starting to see a little bit of a jawline. Still round, but it's a jawline.
And he's got to get to like 7% for that, right?
Yeah.
Isn't what's his name? Isn't Regan Grimes a bit like that? Where
a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good example.
And
Oh yeah. Y'all see him in contest shape, and I'm like, dude, you look like you're like, if you just wore a shirt and shorts, I'd be like, you're about 16 weeks out right now, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd piss him off for sure.
Nah.
Ray Mammo also asks, before I use a growth hormone cause your nose and waist to grow? I'm classic physique and my X frame is extremely important. I think we have the guy here who would know that for sure.
I don't so growth hormone does definitely grow the joints and it grows your head when you take into consideration long-term high usage. I don't think anything like south of 6 IUs in the interim, like let's say 2 or 3 years of competing in bodybuilding, trying to get a pro card, I really don't think you're going to see a substantial fucking increase, especially I think the waist size thing is more so just the amount of food people push in the off season combined with GH, Slen, and sometimes orals and things like that. Like the total androgens that you're on create that sort of overall toxicity to that area, which does absolutely increase organ size a little bit over time. And that's when you see that protrusion. So if you have a naturally small waist, or even if you don't, because who knows what your physique looks like, it's not something you're going to have to worry about unless you're pushing the extremes of that like 6+ IUs at GH. As far as your nose, definitely it does. It grows your head, your nose, your ears, joints, things like that. It absolutely does.
Yeah, it definitely grows your nose. That's one thing I've noticed for sure. But I think, like you said, the waist is more of it's a proxy towards how much total everything are you taking: food, training, drugs, and in general. I also think it's a big issue in the off season that people just kind of let their stomachs hang out, and then that transverse abdominis muscle gets weakened. You sort of stay in a sustained state of distension because you're not consciously aware of like, oh shit, like I can't let this fucking gut just hang like a fucking grandpa. Like I have to actually pull this shit in. That's kind of often what I think as well. It's not necessarily relative to growth hormone.
Let's all lean in, and then we can see our noses, and you can try and guess the dose.
Who has the most?
Guess the dose. Who has the most? In the Jared, you don't count. You're like 4% black though, aren't you?
Yeah.
haven't you got like some Nigerian blood in you or something like that?
Yeah.
One of those albinos.
Yeah. Damn it, man.
Yep, Boff Tough GH for the win.
It all went to my nose and my delts, though. It didn't go anywhere else.
Fuck it, dude. Okay. We got a lot of questions. Okay. MK677 versus CJC1925 or Ipamorelin. Which one would I guess be better? I'd
Quite
say
similar.
Probably neither.
Personal
honestly.
opinions from what I've seen from clients is IPAM seems to be a pretty decent option from secretagogues. I know MK is obviously a lot more commonly used and has been for a longer time, but that comes usually with the at some point the appetite drops off pretty rapidly, and then things start to slow down. I've seen that quite a lot. But yeah, in most cases, as far as secretagogues go, I've seen pretty decent results from the Ipamorelin. Just my personal opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say it depends on what you're using it for. If you're using it purely for an increase in growth hormone, then I think exogenous growth hormone is better than a secretagogue. But if you're trying to assist with appetite issues and you don't have significant blood glucose issues, MK677 could be a good option too. But I've had clients who have used it before and appetites actually got out of control, at least the beginning stages of a surplus, which caused them to overeat and then affect blood glucose issue, cause an increase in blood glucose as well. So yeah, it depends on your situation. I mean, I would say scrap this, go with normal growth hormone. If I had to choose between the two, I would probably say Ipamorelin.
Cool. He also asks, which coach do you think is underrated and is known to put size on their clients? All of us?
Jared.
Yeah.
Jared.
Very underrated.
Get out of here.
I think his catalog of beasts is probably better than most people's.
Yeah.
I
I
think
think
that
there's a lot of people that you do the training for that a lot of people don't even realize.
yeah, for sure. But I think there's when it comes down to it, any coach that's willing to do shit like this and the effort I've seen you guys put into your clients, any coach like this, small name usually, like they're the ones that are actually putting in fucking work. If you have heard a name, and this is just in general, I'm not saying everybody, but if you've heard a name repeatedly, it seems to be the unfortunate reality that they've recruited a lot of clients, and that is why they got their name. It just seems to be that way, unfortunately. When it comes down to like training, diet, and all that stuff, like I've been to Thailand and I've seen these guys hustle their fucking asses off over and over and over all day, every fucking day. They're amazing coaches. So yeah, absolutely. Anybody that is willing to do shit like this, like if you see coaches that are constantly trying to put out free information, like this is a fucking live, it's 9:30 my time. I don't even know what time it is for them. And they're just sitting down, fucking chatting about shit with you guys. Coaches like that are the coaches you should be going for.
Bless your heart.
Thanks, Jared. And as Jared said, he's been to Thailand. Wink, wink. Okay, I'm back again.
Yeah.
And everyone here is massive because of me. Just saying.
Yes, correct.
Well, boys, it's 9:30 in my time, and my phone's gonna die. But I just wanted to say what's up and join the live.
Thanks, bro.
Up there. It was nice
Appreciate
to see you again.
it. Good to see you, bro.
I'll see you
good to
over
see
there
you
in a
guys.
couple of months, mate.
Be safe.
You
I
get
was
that
gonna
spare
say-
bedroom ready.
Colton, are you coming?
Yeah, I'm gonna be back. Yeah. Oh, it's Olympia. Yeah, I'm in Canada right now, so I'm actually really close to there. It's like a $200 trip, so I'll be there.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Adam?
Yeah, please.
Cats competing, unfortunately, I'll be all over Southeast Asia, but I will be putting in a good word for you. We are
Yeah,
going to
please.
Philippines.
All of Southeast Asia, the whole area.
Oh, I'm handing out flyers at this point, dude. You should see that.
Are they like the flyers stay single on top of them? Is that what this is?
No, it's take a number, Kaz's IG. I've got your email, dude.
Oh my god.
So
You're
check
hired.
your spam filter. I got the job. How am I getting my green card? We know how it's working.
Oh my god. All right, y'all. Enjoy the live.
Enjoy
stuff.
the rest of the prep,
Appreciate you,
dude.
Jacob.
Looking
Thank
awesome.
you.
Crush
Thank
it.
you. Dying. Take it easy, y'all.
Okay, that was crazy. Didn't expect him
That
to
was fun.
show up like that. That was cool.
Celebrities dropping in.
Yeah, holy fuck.
Yeah,
We'll
cool.
answer like 3 more questions and then we'll bounce, just because I know you guys have been on here and you all are ready to get your day started. So, Ray Mammal asks again, do you think maintaining 12% body fat for some people is almost impossible? Some friends of mine are at 1,500 calories with 30 minutes cardio and always seem to be flat line around 50% body fat. That's
No, I think that's a completely
bullshit.
reasonable number to achieve year round.
Yeah, I think it's super easy.
Yeah.
I think your friends probably aren't doing what they say they're doing, or they've just been doing it too long and have metabolically adapted to that situation.
All the
Yeah,
situation.
they're all under eating.
Yeah, all the situation that we often see is that, I hate to say it, but your friends might not have that much muscle mass. And I found that when you're trying to cut or get very lean, when you have basically no tissue, you almost end up as skinny fat because you just don't have the metabolic capacity to basically push down. You basically would have to starve yourself. So a lot of my guys who come to me and they're a bit skinny fat, I actually put them into slightly above maintenance, so very slight surplus, or even at maintenance, and just try to build a bit of muscle tissue before entering a deficit, because they're going to be on poverty calories, a high bit of expenditure, and probably still come out the other end either looking stringy or being skinny fat. So yeah, as the guy said, metabolic adaptation, add some muscle to a frame, then have a actual run at a cut.
1,000%.
100%. Just tell all your buddies to do exactly what Adam just said, and they'll start losing some weight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Coach Ponte, online fitness coach, or Justin Ponte, online fitness coach. MAST-D worth it, or is P better? Really, the only difference is going to be that the molecular weight of MAST-P is better, so you're going to get more milligram of drug per milliliter. But even then, the concentrations are usually much lower, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. But you'll be injecting a lot more of it, so it's like, okay. Yeah, so
that's what this is loaded with right now, actually, is a bunch of Masteron propionates. Is absolutely right. Ram Ammo asked 80% of the questions. Dude was ready. Okay, so this is one that's really hard to answer, and a lot of people ask it. I used to ask it a lot too when I was starting out. Show day water and salt intake when you have kept the constant during peak week. This is honestly, and I try to say this with my full heart, it's very hard to tell someone because it usually changes on that day. Like it's sometimes something you don't even have in a plan until it's like a day before. So I don't know.
I've literally got a guy.
Yeah.
Go on, Adam.
Sorry. I was going to say the best generic answer we can give you is if you get sodium and water intake pretty consistent during the whole prep, assuming you are enhanced and you are looking good, like, you've done, you're doing a bit of a carb up, you're taking what you look like post-workout with a bit of a pump and you're looking good. I would say just probably maintain it going into show day, maybe a slight increase in sodium and a slight back and pulling back on water. What I mean by that is not completely cut water, but instead of drinking 2 gallons on show day, have enough just to get your food down and full out, and then probably maybe the I would say the meal before your show bump sodium up. But as Kolton said, it's going to be like, are you spilled over? Are you lean enough? What is your reaction to changing your electrolyte intake? In other words, have you done that? Have you trialed a peak? So in lieu of all of this, like if you haven't done any of that, just keep it consistent, I would say, is your best bet of not fucking things up, because many people try to accomplish peak, use direct or something like that, and end up just fucking up when they could have looked pretty damn good, or 80-90% there, by just keep it consistent. But yeah, you're going to say, Aaron.
Yeah, pretty much the same. Like, I'm going to go ahead and just assume, hopefully, that he's ready. At this point in peak week, the look is good, in which case, don't change anything. Just treat it like a normal day, and you'll probably be all right, and you'll mitigate most of the mistakes that usually happen on the day where people start to do crazy things and change the food input and change the food sources and stuff like that. Whereas unless you've had a different plan in your peak week, and you specifically are setting yourself up for a reduced sodium and water intake on the day, then don't change anything, because doing that now is probably going to have a negative effect on the physique. If the look is good now, don't change it. I got a guy who's going to weigh in tomorrow and compete on Sunday. So for this week, we have to bring him down in weight because he got his height wrong. So this time round, I got to bring him down just below. His weight cap is 78. This morning, he's 78.5 kilograms. Oof. So I've only got to pull off 500 grams.
That's perfect.
So for the last 3 days, we've just had water and sodium actually a little bit higher and kept that very consistent with his morning fasted weight. So now I know, well, today he's got his weigh-in tomorrow. So I know today, well, I can start reducing that a little bit on both ends, a little bit of the sodium. I can pull the water back. I can, if I need to, cut water off at around sort of 5, 6 o'clock when the natural sort of systems kick in, natural diuresis via vitamin C, vitamin B, things like that. Just all the easy options that I know will easily pull off that little extra. Keep him nice and dry in the morning. Go and weigh in. Once that weigh-in's done, rehydrate back up to his normal input levels. And on show day itself, I'm just going to go by the look. Like Kolton says, a lot of things do change on the day. But in this particular case, it's going to be very much like, if it's just been consistent all week and the look is good, don't change it.
Yeah. Like for reference, the way most of us, I'm sure you guys are saying, run a peak with a client is, I have a client send me photos every day, like fasted in the morning, even post gym or post meals. And then they might, when you make my slight adjustments on a daily basis, yeah, sure, the week prior, I'll send like a framework of what I expect us to be doing. But a lot of things around like food, sodium and water, there might be like a, to be announced, or this is what I think we're going to do based on our previous diet, but I might change it. So, a client might wake up after a day be spilled or not spilled, and that might affect what they're doing. So I would be saying, take literally daily photos of yourself in your peak week, note down what your like sodium water intake is. And if you've like nailed the look, keep it consistent and just on show day, Aaron, you brought up a good point. Like, do you have a weight cap? Are you trying to make weight? That's gonna make a difference too. What time do you expect to be on stage? Because many guys will be like, oh, I did my carb up, or I had meals until like 12, but fuck, I'm gonna be on the show's delayed. I'm gonna be on stage at actually 6 p.m. And it's like, okay, we better have some food, a bit of salts, honey, whatever, with you to be able to, carb up again, so to speak, so you don't get flat. So, yeah, man, it's tough to answer, but hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea.
Yeah,
it's a data collection as well, right? If you're paying enough attention to your clients, like I know what this guy looks like in the morning, I know what he looks like after 1 meal, 2 meal, 3 meal, 4 meal, 5 meal. So if that show gets delayed like that and it gets pushed back 3 hours, well, I know, okay, so after this much water and this many meals, he looks like this. And if I want to have him a little bit tighter or a little bit drier than that look at that time when the show is expected, I know I've got to pull things back a little bit and be a little bit more cautious with the food and the water input or the sodium input. And for that to really kind of do that, like you said, is just talk to your clients meal by meal throughout the day. Make sure that you're in communication and you just auto-regulating as you need to, really.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what I do to the T. Is like I collect data. I ask for pictures in the morning, post-workout, after each meal for that last 3-ish weeks. And based on when they look the best in all of those pictures, it's just replicate that day. And sometimes that means you literally don't change a thing. You keep everything consistent. Sometimes that means, like what Aaron said, if the show's you're getting on prejudging and it's like noon, and we know that after 3 meals and 2 liters of water, you're looking really watery. Well, then we can easily make an adjustment based on how we know you look after 1 liter of water, so on food. So it's always really important to have those pictures. And then if you look amazing post-workout after X amount of meals and X amount of water, do that on show day. Like, you will look amazing. Oftentimes people look amazing a week before the show, and then they fuck it all up trying to be super complicated. You can be super simple, and it works 99% of the time. So there's a lot of ways you cut it.
I agree.
Good little tip there as well. Sorry, mate. We're going to keep doing that.
All good.
It's a good tip there. What you said, if you know someone looks good post-workout after a certain amount of meals, the training as well. So they look good post-workout, but what was their workout? Was it a regular 1 hour or proper session? Try to program your training for the last week or 2 at least to just replicate what you're going to do backstage. So we might be talking a couple sets of press ups, couple sets of rows, couple sets of lateral raises, couple sets of bicep curls, tricep, real simple, just a few light pump sets. And that's it. You say, that's your training done for the day. Send me pictures right afterwards. Let's see what you look like. And kind of try and replicate that show day scenario the best you possibly can. And that usually takes away a lot of the mistakes.
I was basically going to say the same thing. I think what you probably find the best thing is something that's consistent to what we've been doing. If you're doing like some crazy cheat meal with foods that you haven't done before, some crazy water manipulation, like that's typically when things are going to fuck out. That's when you're going to get, you're going to get yourself spilling over. You're going to get yourself looking watery and bloated. Like genuinely, like I think the best advice is just keep it consistent when you're looking your best, and that's probably going to give you the best result.
Yeah. 1,000%. All right, guys. Well, I'll let you off the hook. We've been on for an hour and a half now. I do appreciate it greatly. Everyone, if you do have more questions, of course, put them down in the comment below on this video. We'll come back to it when we do have time, either just in responses via text or on the next live that we do. I appreciate you guys greatly. Don't forget to subscribe, click the bell button, and of course, when we get the Discord running, again, I'm very sorry for that. I've hired a team to set it up. I'll let you know, and we'll make sure it's secure. So thank you, everybody. Beautiful day.
Cool.
Thank you, guys.
Good chat.